Hello and a warm welcome to all of you joining us today. Religion and spirituality are both rooted in trying to understand the meaning of life and, in some cases, how a relationship with the higher power may influence that meaning. You may have heard or even used the terms religion and spirituality interchangeably. But while they are not diametric opposites, neither are they the same. Today, let's learn how to tell the difference between spirituality and religion. Sister Denise, who's joining us from Germany today, actually doesn't need any introduction. But for those who are joining us for the first time, Sister Denise is an experienced practitioner of Raj Yoga for over 45 years with the Brahma Kumaris. She has spent the last 4 decades traveling the globe sharing spiritual wisdom. So let us all give her a warm welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to be here. So, religion and spirituality. I'm just wondering if you can see me all right. There seems to be a pause on my side. Can you just tell me you can see me all right?
Yes, it's perfect, sister.
Okay, very good. So the thing with religion and spirituality is these are terms that people use very differently because it is such a subjective matter. In many ways, it's a private matter. And people use the terms religion and spirituality to correspond with what they are feeling at that moment when they are saying those words. So there's a wide variation. And what I'd like to try to do today is to define the words as I'm using them and hope that we're able to be on the same page, be on the same wavelength on this subject. But the words religion and spirituality are also loaded words because there is a political connotation, social sensitivities are there, and it's very much caught up with people's prejudices. Some religions are the dominant religion in a particular culture. And in that case, religion and culture are interchangeable, but it may be quite a materialistic culture. And in that case, religion and spirituality do get to be diametrically opposed. Then there are other religions which may be minority religions, so that the culture of that religion is not the dominant culture. And very often in that situation, the practitioners of the religion will give a bit more emphasis on what I would call the spiritual aspect, because religion is indistinguishable from culture, politics, psychology, and the worldview people have, what people think reality is. Because religion is in many ways an institution, and the institution of religion has a dominant impact on the people who are connected with that institution, and it will indicate to the participants of that religion that if you want to be a good practitioner of this particular religion, then you have to behave in a particular way, you have to look in a particular way, get married in a particular way, have children in a particular way, go to work in a particular way, go on holiday in a particular way. All these things are linked to the institution of religion. Now, what is happening in the world today is that from the angle of the spiritual practice that I do, which is called Raj Yoga, and which is taught at the Brahma Kumari's World Spiritual University, we'll look at the world in terms of a vast time cycle. And one of the things that you find as a difference between religion and spirituality is and it varies between the different religions also, and that is the history of time, the history of God, the history of creation. All of this is very much variable depending on which religion it is. So, in the angle that I look at things, the process of life is not a process of evolution and progress, but a process where everything was set up in a perfect and harmonious way, and then gradually over time, like the laws of entropy, everything gradually got less power, less integrated, and more chaotic. And so this also explains why the world is the way it is at the moment. It's according to this process of gradual loss of integrity. But most of the religions, and certainly the dominant religious and cultural view of the Western world, is progress. And this is the foundation of the political system of democracy, which believes that we're getting better and everything is better than what it was. And this is also the view of science, which in a lot of ways has gained the status of a religion because people believe in it very often with a similar blind faith as some people might believe in their religions. So let's look for a moment at what spirituality is. And to me, this word spirituality in my own personal life applies to something very, very deep on the inside of your being, the very depth of your soul. And it is a very private relationship between the soul and the higher power or God or the Supreme Being. And it involves an inner life, development of an inner life, and you may be externally in a particular culture where a particular religion is dominant, and you can participate in that, but it may have nothing to do with your spirituality. And in some cases, a person may be so connected with the dominant religion that they're able to manage the external manifestation and also develop their inner life totally in accordance with the more esoteric aspects of that religion. So you can see that religion and spirituality can sometimes be the same thing and sometimes quite the opposite. In India, when the independence from colonialism was achieved, they split India into India, East Pakistan, West Pakistan. East Pakistan then became Bangladesh. And at that time, they had to make a lot of decisions. They had to create a constitution. And there were many religious conflicts in the area. So India decided that in the name of social harmony, there it would be, or the government would be secular. And so it was decided that it would be a secular republic. Whereas in Pakistan, it was decided that it would be an Islamic theocracy. And that's a very, very different system of government. And in a country which is secular, like, for example, another country which classifies itself as secular and is very forceful about this is France. And I'm currently in Germany, where the country is, the southern part is dominated by Catholicism and the northern part by Lutheranism. And this influences the culture very much. In England, where I came from, the constitution is that it is an Anglican parliamentary democracy with the king and queen, currently a queen, but it's a kingdom. And so we call it the United Kingdom. And the dominant religion, or the religion of state, is Anglicanism. And so the majority of the people are Anglicans, and a few other types of Protestantism, and a small number of Catholics, a small number of Jews. But what's happening in Europe at the moment is there's a vast number of people who are now living in Europe who come from the traditions of India, the traditions of the Middle East, Islamic traditions, and there are many people from Africa. And so what has happened is you have got such a big variety, a big spectrum of cultures and religions that there is very often a clash. And in a case like that, then looking at the word spirituality, you find something very interesting, because the core of every religion, regardless of the differences in the tenets and the ideas and concepts and belief systems, but the core of all of them is spirituality. And so I will define spirituality, how it can be talked about when it is referring to the core of a human being, which comes before the religion. So you can say that spirituality corresponds to the esoteric, and religion corresponds to the exoteric. So the esoteric is the inner, and the exoteric is the outer. So according to the studies that I do, there are some realities that are the same for anyone who is a human being. And this is why it's useful in a very pluralistic society, because we need to find common ground in order to be able to live together in harmony. And at the moment, the tensions between the different polarized elements of society are very dire and explosive, and very often result in violence, resentment, revenge, and a lot of suffering, which doesn't seem to go away. It flares up, and it's been flaring up a lot lately. So what is the core of every human being on earth? And that is that each and every one is a spirit. And so the word spirituality comes from this word spirit. And a spirit refers to consciousness. So every human being is consciousness, or the being, the spirit, the animating force, and then your external form, your body, which can vary a great deal. You're either male or female. You can be classified according to your race, your nationality, your religion, your culture, all of these are assigned to you as soon as you get born. But before you're born, you don't have any of these. And people do have this question, where do I come from? What am I? Who am I? These are deep metaphysical questions that mostly are not answered and cannot be answered because it requires information that is not there and cannot be discovered by investigating the material world. We cannot discover human spirit through the scientific method because science covers only matter and spirit is not matter. Your body is not spirit. Your body is matter. And so that means you tend to identify with your body, but spirituality says that's okay, but there's a great advantage in identifying with yourself as a spirit or the soul within. And every soul is common or has common features regardless of religion, spirituality, gender, or whatever. And we could say that every soul is a son of God, a child of God, but it doesn't come in males and females. The soul is genderless. And so when you're developing yourself spiritually, you also have to go beyond gender. Otherwise, you're still in the world of matter because gender is a factor of your body. Of course, your body influences your mind, your thinking, your socialization, all of these things. But once you go to the essential description of what a being is, we would say all beings are points of light, sparks, the animating spark that animates the human body, the spark of life. So that isn't male or female or darker or lighter or bigger or smaller or anything like that. And it doesn't have a language, it doesn't have a nationality, it doesn't have a body or a body color. And so spirituality begins with this concept that I am a spark of light and I animate this body and I do whatever I do through this body, but I am not this body. And so where did I come from? I came into this body, but from where? And so people are not able to figure that out. Now, in India, there is very much the belief in reincarnation and the philosophy of karma, because those two things go together. So what is said in all the religions is that the soul is immortal. The body is obviously not immortal. But if you say, okay, I'm a mortal body and I have an immortal soul, you don't know too much about your immortal soul, but you just believe in it. But if you put it the other way around and you say, I am an immortal soul and I am currently occupying this temporary body, which has a life expectancy of, I don't know what the life expectancy is, 70, 80, 90 years. And then I will die, you see. But a person who says, no, I focus on my spirituality, I am first and foremost the spirit, they will never say, I will die, because they're identifying with the immortal spirit. So then they will not say, I will die. They will say, I will leave my body and I will go somewhere else. And I came from somewhere else. So once you start to think about reincarnation in that respect, you have a bit more access to answer the question, where did I come from and where am I going? So in religions which don't believe in reincarnation, they generally say, well, I came from God, and when I finish this life, I will go back to God. So that's fairly easy to adopt that belief, but it doesn't explain the differences in people's situations. And some are rich, some are poor, some are happy, some are miserable, some are well, some are not well, some are intelligent, some are beautiful, some are lucky, some are unlucky. All this is connected with this concept of karma and reincarnation. So to me, if we're talking about Hinduism, then there's a great deal of attention on spirituality. It comes in the scriptures a great deal, and people are very aware about being a spirit who reincarnates and who goes through many lives, and they talk about this a great deal. Then other religions which are theocentered, God-centered religions, as we can say mostly the Abrahamic religions, which means Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They do not believe in reincarnation. There is the idea of as you sow, so shall you reap, which is a simple version of the philosophy of karma, but it doesn't talk about reincarnation, and it talks about the soul that you come, you have one life, and then you go either to heaven or to hell, depending on your action. So if you think about depictions of heaven or hell in the Abrahamic traditions, you will see, sort of devils boiling people in oil and sticking spears into them and putting them on racks. So it all looks like pretty much conventional torture, which goes on in wartime or behind the scenes. But these are quite terrestrial pictures or icons. And then if you think about heaven, you see beautiful flower gardens and fruits and lions and lambs drinking together at the same waterhole, and it's all very physical. One is very pleasant, the other is very unpleasant. But it doesn't really say anything about a dimension of existence that is outside the universe, whereas spirituality tends to bring that in. And in Buddhism, which is also a religion that does talk about reincarnation and karma, but in Buddhism, there's no concept of God and there's no concept of the soul as such. So that's another approach. The one that I find very, very interesting is the one that comes from India, partly because there's a lot of information, and partly because the study that I do is from India, and it specifically distinguishes itself from conventional Hinduism. Where while it is in the context of Indian culture and spirituality. So all that makes it extremely interesting and fascinating to me, because my angle on these things is not about beliefs and you belong to this one or you belong to that one. I'm more interested in really going into the depth of what spirituality is, because it seems to me that to be able to grasp the thing that is common to all humanity is going to allow some of the very beautiful principles of both spirituality and religion to be brought into a practical situation and to be expressed and to be lived. And that is to do with love and peace and coexistence in harmony, being in your power, being true to yourself, understanding the ways of the world, both the scientific ways of the world of matter and also the laws of spirituality, which describe the ways of the spirit and the interaction between spirit and matter. And also, it talks about the relationship between souls and the higher power, the supreme being. And that is also very interesting. And when we talk about yoga, and I'm not talking about the physical exercises or mantras or any of these things, but yoga in another sense, yoga in the ancient meaning of the term, yoga means something more like communion. So it is the communion between the soul and God, the Supreme Soul, so that the soul can draw the energy of God into the self. And this is of great importance because when a soul, doesn't matter what religion or color or background or gender that is, but when a soul is spiritually depleted, then negative action gets performed. And as a result of that, there is suffering. So our concern as people with heart, our concern is to understand what is the way to remove human suffering. That's a very powerful motivator in spirituality and also in different religions. And in religions, there is the idea of charity and taking care of people who are needy and suffering. But in spirituality, it says everyone on earth is spiritually depleted. And this is the reason why there is the experience of human suffering, and you can see it all around you in different degrees for different people in different places, but it's there. So spiritual depletion, once you kind of get that, oh, my problem is I'm spiritually depleted, then your immediate response to that is, how do I get spiritually refilled? Because I don't want to be running on empty. That's not comfortable. And so spirituality ultimately means understanding whatever you need to understand in order to be able to make contact with the Supreme Being. And it's a very subtle contact. You could say a telepathic contact, mind to mind, your mind connected to the mind of the Supreme Being. And now with communications technology, it's easier for us to imagine that because we have Bluetooth, we have Wi-Fi, we have all these different ways of connecting devices to another device, or you connect yourself to the internet, or even you can, you don't even have to plug your device into the electricity, you can do it also remotely. So this, I think, helps us to understand that the soul uses a device, which is the body, but the soul needs power, you see. And even with your iPad or telephone or computer, laptop, whatever it is, if it doesn't have power, it doesn't work. And the soul, when it is on low energy, low power, spiritually depleted, then it starts performing actions that are against its own best interests. And this is why they're called wrong actions. Because when you do an action which is going to cause you and some other people pain and suffering, then that's not useful, that's counterproductive. Why would you do that unless you can't help it? So what stops a person being able to do only action which is beneficial for the self and others and leading to profit is because you don't have power. And if you don't have power, you can't go to the petrol station and get a power pack for the soul. You can't go to your doctor and say, "Oh, I'm depleted. Could you please give me a pill for that?" There's no pill for that. Depletion of the soul can only be refilled by making contact with the Supreme Being. And this is the great importance of the Supreme Being, is that that is an energy source, a being who contains so much power that even if every soul on earth would plug in with their mind, they could get enough to reach a point of being spiritually completely full. And that is what is the meaning of yoga. So in religion, people pray to God and they ask for things. They say, make me healthy, make me pass my exams, take away my sins. There's a whole set of instructions that they give to God. And they think that if they do it strongly enough, deeply enough, sincerely enough, that it will happen. But very often it doesn't happen. And then they just have to believe that one day it will happen. And occasionally someone will do a very intense type of religious practice and they may get some results. And when they get some results, then they say, oh yeah, this proves that it works and that God is doing something for me, and therefore I should continue to do this way. But spirituality doesn't operate in that way. Spirituality says, okay, I'm spiritually depleted, so I need to make frequent and sustained contact with the Supreme Being, because I need enough energy to last me for many, many, many lives. Because this is the time when the soul fill. And if you have this idea that you've been reincarnating a lot, then every time you get a new birth, you have a little bit less power. And in the religions which don't believe in reincarnation, the assumption is that, you were made perfect, and then like in Christianity, there is this idea of original sin. So as soon as you get born, you are a sinner, whether you do anything or not. And so you have to get baptized so that your sin can be removed. But then you don't really know how to distinguish between a sin that you don't know anything about and other sins that you do know something about. And it's not really explained. So this is another area where religion gives trouble, in a sense, because people have questions. They have metaphysical questions, and the religion says, we have the truth, we know the truth, we can answer your questions. But then you ask your questions and then you are told, well, you must have faith. And then the person will say, well, why? Why can't I have an explanation? And I think this relationship with religion has come up in the last 100 years or so because of science. The rise of science since the end of the 19th century, so maybe 150 years, has taught us that if there's a question, there's an answer. And if you don't have the answer, you do research and you'll find it. And this is how science works. You start with some knowledge and you keep increasing your knowledge, and that gives rise to the idea that if we don't know it yet, we will know it later. So like in the context of the world pandemic that we're going through, it's been over a year this has been going on, and because of the mutations of the virus, it's getting worse, even though there's a vaccine. And the scientific people say, well, we're researching, we're working on it, we'll get there, we'll find the solution, and then everybody will be COVID-free. But at the moment, we are somewhat overwhelmed by cases. And so there's a bit of a panic in some areas. But spirituality comes at it from a very different angle. And spirituality says that all the information that we need to understand ourselves and what's happening is contained within the mind of God. And so we need access to that so that we will know. And so the relationship in spirituality between a spirit and God is also that of a student. So you are a child of God, you are a student of God. And there is also this idea of being one who is this relationship with the guru. Now, this word guru applies in India, and it has a very specific meaning in spirituality. So the guru will actually take you to the state where you are completely free from negative karma, which means you have to study the laws of karma so that you know and can take responsibility and do something about your karma. And in religion, the founder of the religion or God will do everything. All you have to do is have faith and sit down and pray, and God will do the rest. In spirituality, it's not like that. Spirituality, you have to study, you have to meditate, you have to take responsibility for your character defects, and you are called to account unreservedly. And if you have a negative tendency or addiction or something like that, then it's up to you to draw energy from God into yourself to the point where you have more power than the addiction, and then you stop. And people say, I can't help it, I don't have the power, things like this. But when you do have the power, you stop. And in religion, this idea isn't there. So all of these are various reasons why, for me, once you know that you can have what religion doesn't provide, then someone like me will go for it. But the thing is, why people stay within the context of their religion is because they don't really want to be an outsider. They don't want to be out of the box. They don't want to function in unknown territory while at the same time being surrounded by all the people who are in that religious, cultural, and political, sociological context. So it's quite a balancing act. So some people will say, "Oh, I don't know how I'm going to do that," and it's easier to trust in the traditions and to go along with what everyone else is doing, and there you are. It's life, it's normal. You want to be normal, you don't want to stand out, you want to be accepted, you want to be approved of, and that's more important. So ultimately, it really depends on what you want as an individual, what your values are, and what you think gives meaning to your life. So again, it comes back to the self. It's a very subjective thing. So I'm speaking to you from the angle of where I'm coming from. And that is my take on the difference between religion and spirituality, and my position, how I position myself is, I can live with people of any religion, and I study the material of all the religions, because I think that if you're going to function in a position of a teacher or somebody who talks about these things, you need to do your homework, and you need to understand what the different belief systems are, the sensitivities, the areas which are very delicate, um, what you can talk about, what you can't talk about, the taboos, all of these things. But once you are familiar with all of this, you're just a human spirit. And the people in any part of the world are also human spirits. So when you interact on that level, there's no feeling of difference. Once you start to bring in all the physical things, the culture things, the belief systems, and so on, there you have to negotiate. But when you go beyond that, we're all souls, and we're all fundamentally pure, peaceful, powerful, loving. And what we owe to each other is love and regard, because our relationship is fraternal. So I like that. I think that's a good way to live. Of course, you have your own tendencies, your own baggage, and so on, which you have to deal with. But nevertheless, you deal with it as it comes up. So I'll stop there and take a pause and go back to Jabin. If you have some questions or anything like that.
Yes, thank you, sister. That was very clear of what is the difference between religion and spirituality, and how you introduced us of who we truly are, these souls, spark of light. So if you could, before we begin with the question and answer, if you could guide us to a few minutes of meditation to empower ourselves.
Definitely. So, what is meditation? The first step of meditation is to turn within. So take a moment to let yourself become quiet and gently orient yourself within. And position yourself behind your face. The spirit is seated in the forehead, looking through the eyes, seeing the material world. Listening through the ears to the sounds around. You can taste and touch, and smell. So you have contact with the world through the senses. Of meditation, we want to go deep. So turn inside and see yourself in your mind's eye as a point of light. Absolutely perfect and beautiful. step back from the body and sense perception. And feel your soul with your mind, your peace, purity, love. And feel your power. You have a lot of power. As you go deep inside, you find that you're shifting to a dimension of light. Non-material dimension. This is the world of the soul. And in this world of light, you can experience contact with the Supreme Light. Also a point infinitely powerful. Infinitely bright, loving and pure. And your point of light goes to that point of light and makes contact. And the energy begins to flow. It's very subtle. Stay focused. Stay with that light. Open yourself to that light. And let that energy flow into yourself. Feel yourself becoming light and bright and stronger. As if you were drinking in the most empowering, healthy drink for the soul. And then gently let yourself return back to the everyday world of sights and sounds. You're reconnected with your body and you feel regenerated, empowered, peaceful. Do this time to time during the day, whenever you get time. Keep your level of energy up and gradually increase. This is meditation. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. That was very empowering. I like what you said, that core of every religion is spirituality. And spirituality comes from the spirit, which is consciousness. and that now everyone in this world is spiritually depleted, and how we can check that is by our actions or what we do. When we are doing wrong actions, that's how we can come out to know that we are depleted. And how do we recharge ourselves is to connect with the Supreme Being, which is actually the meaning of yoga. What you said is communion of the soul and the Supreme Soul. There is a saying by someone who practices both religion and spirituality, that the idea of religion and spirituality is like a rectangle versus a square. Within religion, there is spirituality, but if you have spirituality, it doesn't necessarily mean you have religion. Is there something you would like to add to that?
Well, it's a good analogy, because definitely there is spirituality within religion, but there are some practices of religion which might not be considered spiritual. So because spirituality is very internal, I think I might rather say that maybe the religion is a rectangle, and on the inside of the rectangle we should put a heart, because spirituality is really about the heart, and not just the heart as lovey-dovey fuzzy feelings, not that, but the heart, which is the deep sensitivity to the reality of a human being, and relating to yourself, to others, and to God from the heart of the soul. So I would make a different design.
Okay. Our next question is, how can a soul experience hell or heaven without a body?
Well, there is the soul, and there is the physical body, and then there is something called the subtle body. And the subtle body is like an etheric body. And there is a film called Ghost, which takes up this subject a little bit, about that when somebody dies, they leave their physical body, but the subtle body and the soul, they go. And so this is why sometimes you can actually see a ghost or something like that. So it's possible for the soul who has left one body, but there's negative karma, and you do get a situation where a soul performs a lot of negative karma where they can't go to the next body. They become like a wandering soul, and this is a lot of suffering for that soul. And also you experience hell in visions. Sometimes people experience, so in between when you leave your body and you get another body, there's a period of time, and there's a period of time when you are in the womb. And in the womb, you're connected with a body which is forming, but it's not yet formed. And so you're with your subtle body, and in there you can have visions of what you did and what the punishment for that is. So there are many things that are said about that. So that could be an experience of hell without a body.
Okay. Our next question is, where do science, spirituality, and religion merge?
They do merge. I think they merge where a person who is practicing spirituality and who knows about it, in both cases to a maximum degree, And when science has gone to the maximum of the pursuit of what is the energy of matter, basically. And I saw on the news the other day that people have found a fifth form of energy, and that they detected it, but once they figured it out, they would have to rewrite the laws of physics. They haven't got quite that far, but they've detected that there is something. And then religion, I think, is nowadays getting very interested in their spiritual core because it's so plural and there's so much that they have to deal with in terms of human suffering, in terms of religion which has gone wrong or got corrupted or something like this. So also the followers of the different religions in some cases feel that they've been failed by the religion. So they're looking for something else that the religions are not providing. And then the religions are noticing that our people are leaving because our level of spirituality is insufficient. And so they're all really working towards this, I think, what I would call essential spirituality. And so I think that a convergence of all these three is on the way. I don't think it's happened yet, and I don't know exactly what it would look like. But when you get a convergence of religion, spirituality, and science, I would call that full-on enlightenment. So that would be really good. Yeah.
Okay, our next question is, can you expand a bit on the reasons why some souls have devotional mindset or are drawn to devotion, and then they transfer to spirituality, but there are a lot of troubles, especially because they are in a higher position or in a high position?
Well, there was one person who was in the highest position, and that was to be the vice president of his country. And he did it so well and so judiciously that we have really a fine example of someone who's highly respected in the community, excellent at his work, and occupying the second highest position in this country after the president. So I think it just really depends on how you integrate what you understand into your practical life. And this process of integrating it into practical day-to-day life is key and crucial. And this is why I think it's very important that when you practice spirituality, it should be done not in isolation, but in the context of the regular world. Because what are you doing? You're creating an atmosphere, a vibration. You're making sure that your conduct is according to the laws of spirituality, and you have to negotiate your way through life because it's not evident that you can do that just like that. So trouble may happen when a person just doesn't quite understand how they have to do this. And there are plenty of tests and plenty of opposition and all that. And this is the exams. This is a study. You always have exams. And when you have exams, it means you need to really think about the practical application of what you know in such a way that the people around you feel the essential purity and goodness of what you are focused on. And then they won't give you trouble because they feel your sincerity, your integrity, and your focus.
Thank you, sister. We have our last question. During COVID peak in 2020, religious conflicts reduced a lot, and in fact, all religions came together to fight one so-called enemy, Corona. Is this the start of an era of one and only one Adi Sanatan Devi Devta Dharam?
Well, you never know. It's very hard to say because COVID presumably will be there for some time more because it's not looking good at the moment with all these variants of the virus. But historically, there have been pandemics more or less every 100 years, and they last a few years, some 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then the medical science finds ways around them, and then they're not a pandemic anymore. And whenever there is a common enemy, people get together, religions get together, because it's a very unifying force having a common enemy. But when the common enemy isn't there anymore, then you go back to your divisions. So I can't really say that this is the beginning of one thing, but what I feel is that we are at a crossroads of civilization, and that whatever is the infrastructures of the world today, the social structures, the political structures, the religions, the different groups, every single one has weaknesses and has strengths. But just as I said before, that every human soul is depleted, I would say that that also applies to the infrastructures, to the groupings. Everyone is depleted, everyone is corrupted to some extent. So I really do not think that any single one is going to rise up, excuse me, and say, we are the one. I don't think it's going to work like that. To me, it's more like all of them will have to say, we failed, and then turn to God and say, you tell us what to do. And that will be something different, something new, something that is not one of the existing ones. That's how I see it.
Thank you, sister. We have a lot of messages on YouTube and also on Zoom telling me to thank you for this beautiful session. There's one sister who has sent a little longer thank you. She says, I feel that nowadays religion or religious leaders gone into so much of material aspects of matters. I am Catholic for the past 45 years, and I came into this study. And I came into the study very recently, and the topics amaze me so much with incarnation and not yet in terms with rebirth. However, I'm convinced that connection to the Supreme Soul is the only way we can vibrate in that right energy. So thank you, Sister Denise, for an amazing talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thank you once again for joining us today. And I hope all of you have taken something from this session today and will start practicing meditation and empowering yourself. We will be having our next session on coming Saturday on the 24th of April at 4 p.m. Jakarta time. I have dropped my number in the chat box, so kindly send me a message so that I can update you with the upcoming sessions. Thank you, Sister Denise, for your time and your wisdom, and hope to have you with us once again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been delightful, and your events are always really beautifully arranged. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.